I drove 3 hours for Christmas dinner only to find a fold-out chair in the corner. My seat had been given to my aunt's dog. My mom said, "You're not really around enough to prioritize." I nodded and left before dessert. Then I opened my app, reversed the grocery split, froze the shared Amex, and flagged the delivery order. At 8:47 p.m., my sister called, screaming, "Why did you do this?" I don't know any bigger egomaniacs than my own family. That's not bitterness talking, that's years of observing them twist reality so hard it snaps. You can't tell them anything. They don't hear you unless you're flattering them or footing the bill. Christmas is the only time I ever bother showing up anymore. Once a year, 3-hour drive in freezing rain, because my mom said it would mean a lot. It never does. When I got there, the house was packed, every room buzzing, everyone yelling over each other. I dropped my coat by the door, set down the pie I'd paid $45 for, and headed toward the dining room. I figured bare minimum, I'd sit, eat, make it through a few passive-aggressive comments, and leave with my dignity intact. But my seat, the spot I've had since high school, was taken. Not by a cousin, not by some elderly relative. No, it was the dog. My aunt's dog, wearing a tiny red sweater and sitting at the table like it paid rent. The best part? The dog had a full plate in front of it, chicken, mashed potatoes, peas. A damn Christmas feast. I looked around like I had to be dreaming, but no one blinked. They were all just eating like this was completely normal. I caught my mom's eye across the table. She just said, flat as ever, "You don't come here often enough to prioritize." That was all. No sarcasm, no joke. Just that. I didn't argue. I didn't ask who made that decision. I found the last empty chair in the room, a cold metal folding chair by the corner, and sat down. Nobody moved over. Nobody said hi. Nobody asked how I was doing. I ate in silence. The ham was dry, the stuffing soggy, but I stayed out of habit. Maybe out of that old instinct to not make waves. It was only when people started getting up for dessert that I realized how done I was. I got up, went to the kitchen, stood near the sink, and pulled out my phone. I didn't think about it, I just acted. First, I opened the grocery app. I'd been splitting holiday food costs with my sister all month, except I'd been paying 90% of it because she had to cover daycare. Cancelled the entire split. Then I opened the Amex app, froze the joint card, the same one she'd begged me to co-sign for when she moved into her new place. Claimed she needed it just until graduation. That was 2 years ago. Last, I went to the delivery service. The massive $300 order she'd insisted we place under my account so we could save with my rewards. Marked it unauthorized. Refund requested. By the time I finished, my pie was untouched and my hands weren't even shaking. I just felt cold. Not angry cold, clear cold. At exactly 8:47 p.m., my phone rang. My sister. I picked up. She was screaming, not asking, screaming. "Why did you do that?" I didn't answer. I ended the call, set my phone down, took one bite of the pie, and left it on the counter. It was the clearest I'd felt in years. They didn't remember the $18,000 I'd given her when she was about to drop out of college. The money she cried for, the money I wired with no strings attached, not because I had extra lying around, but because she begged and mom and dad said no. That wasn't a family sacrifice, they saw. It was a favor they were entitled to. Now they were laughing at a table I wasn't invited to sit at. They'd forgotten who they thought I was, the quiet one, the easy one. But this time, I wasn't leaving quietly. The fallout didn't start at once, it crept in like smoke. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. 7 from my sister, 2 from my mom, 1 from my dad, which said more than it seemed. He usually avoids direct involvement until the house is already burning. The rest were from numbers I didn't recognize but could guess. Cousins, probably even my aunt, the one whose dog ate at the table like a guest. I ignored them all. By noon, I had 2 group texts waiting for me. One from the family chat, dozens of messages, mostly in all caps. The second was from my mom directly, long and rambling, trying to sound calm but not even bothering to hide the guilt trip. She said I'd humiliated my sister, that the Amex freeze left her stranded at the grocery store, that she had no way to pay for diapers and formula, and now had to ask her boyfriend to help, like I was supposed to feel bad about that. That card was never supposed to be a permanent lifeline. She told me she'd pay the balance every month. Then it turned into a few late payments, then none. By the time I froze it, she owed $2,700, and I'd paid the interest every time just to protect my credit. I replied once, just one message. $18,000 paid. No contract, no thanks. You gave my seat to a dog. I didn't hear anything back for a full day. Then the letter arrived, certified mail from a law firm. Not a real lawsuit yet, but a formal request for repayment. They were calling it a misunderstanding. A loan my sister claims I agreed to, which she now cannot fulfill under current hardship. She wanted a repayment schedule that I was to agree to within 10 business days, or else they'd proceed with civil action. That's when I started laughing. Because the same girl who'd sobbed on my couch about her dreams and begged for help now wanted to sue me for money I'd given her voluntarily. I didn't respond to the firm. I didn't need to. I called a friend from law school who owed me a favor, asked her to go through every transfer, every message, every receipt. We found exactly what I remembered, nothing that would ever hold up in court. Not one document framing that money as a loan. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The next day, my cousin Brooke called me. She never calls, always texts. I picked up thinking she was going to ask me to play peacemaker. Instead, she was whispering. She told me she'd seen something at Christmas. Said my sister had dragged her kid, my niece, by the arms so hard she'd left red marks. Said the little one was crying, not just like a tantrum, but terrified. Brooke told me she'd wanted to say something, but our mom shut it down fast. Told her it was a stressful day, and not to blow it out of proportion. I felt something flip in me. Not anger, not yet, but something sharp, something that wasn't going away this time. I asked Brooke if she'd write it down. She already had. A week later, I filed the report. They wanted to turn this into a war over money? Fine. But they forgot what I do for a living. They forgot what I've seen in courtrooms, what manipulation looks like when it's dressed up as family values. Now it wasn't about the chair. It wasn't about the card. It was about what they were willing to protect just to keep their version of the story intact. They had no idea what was coming next. I filed it on a Thursday morning, clean, clinical, and entirely factual. I attached Brooke's written statement, screenshots of our text thread, and every financial record I had. I didn't embellish. I didn't add a single word I couldn't prove. Just dates, facts, names. I dropped it off at the local PD in my city, not theirs. It would be forwarded through the proper channels, but it was enough to start a file. Enough to make it real. My phone stayed quiet for a full day after that, like they all sensed something had shifted, even if they didn't know what. Then on Friday, it all exploded. I got a call from my dad. I let it go to voicemail. He left one of those messages where he tries to sound calm but is clearly boiling under the surface. Said I was tearing the family apart. Said this wasn't the way to handle things. Never mind the lawsuit. Never mind the financial betrayal. Never mind the fact that his daughter yanked her kid hard enough to leave visible marks. That wasn't the concern, it was me. I was the problem. My sister finally texted, one line. You think you're going to ruin me? I didn't answer. Instead, I met up with Brooke and our cousin Nate at a bar that Saturday, the only two people in the entire family who hadn't tried to guilt me, silence me, or pretend I was crazy. We hadn't all been in the same room in over a year. It didn't take long before we were swapping stories, not angry rants, just moments, details, all the quiet things our parents swept under the rug for decades. Turns out Brooke had seen more than she told me. My sister had snapped before. Last summer, she'd screamed at her kids so loudly in the backyard that a neighbor knocked on the door to check in. Nate had noticed how the oldest one flinched whenever my sister raised her hand too fast. None of them had said anything until now. They were tired too, tired of pretending the dysfunction was just family stuff. Tired of watching people get away with things because they knew how to cry at the right time or play the victim just long enough to dodge consequences. That night, I drafted a second statement. I didn't need it for the report, it was just for me. A personal record of everything I'd seen and everything I'd ignored. I listed out the $18,000 wire, the 6 months of Amex payments I'd made alone, the grocery bills, the favors, the phone calls I'd answered at 2 a.m., and the holidays I'd shown up for even when they made it clear I wasn't welcome. The next day, the police called, not to arrest anyone, just to ask a few more questions. And just like that, the fear hit them. I know because my mom finally called. This time she cried, not angry, not sharp. She tried the other tactic. Said she was worried about how far this was going. That she couldn't sleep thinking about what might happen to the family. She asked me to think about my niece, my nephew, about how I was going to traumatize them with all this. I didn't yell. I didn't try to explain. I just told her what she didn't want to hear. She was already too late. She could have stopped this a long time ago, the first time she saw my sister lose it, the first time she knew something was wrong and decided to look the other way. Now the decisions were out of her hands. The storm was already coming, and they had no one to blame but themselves. The following week, the tone changed. Nobody was yelling anymore. No more threats, no more guilt-laced texts. Now it was all concern and misunderstanding. They wanted to talk. They wanted to find common ground. They asked if I'd be open to a family meeting, like this was a contract negotiation, like they hadn't just tried to sue me and bury the bruises on a child's arm. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded everything, texts, emails, voicemails, to the detective assigned to the case. Let them piece it together. Let them see how fast the family can switch faces when they realize they've gone too far. Brooke called to tell me my sister was unraveling, crying constantly, telling anyone who would listen that I was out to destroy her, that I was making everything up, that I had always been jealous of her. Jealous? I almost laughed when Brooke said it. What exactly was I supposed to be jealous of? Her job? She'd quit 3 in 2 years. Her boyfriend? The guy who once asked me if I could spot him rent. Her life? The one held together with favors and lies and last-minute rescues? But this was the narrative now, poor her, evil me. Even my dad was parroting it, telling extended family I was overreacting to a disagreement. He left out the part about the money, the threats, the child abuse report. Then came the last straw. I got a letter from my sister's lawyer, a new one. This one wasn't about the money. It was a warning, a cease and desist for defamation of character. Claimed I was spreading false accusations that were damaging her career prospects and emotional well-being. I didn't even get angry. I took it to the DA's office, let them read it, compare it to the report, the photos, the statements. A week later, my sister got a visit. Not an arrest, just a warning. An officer showed up at her door, asked a few questions, made sure the kids were okay. That's when the silence started. No more calls, no more texts. Nothing from her, from my parents, from anyone on their side. Just radio silence, like they thought if they ignored it long enough, it might all blow over. But it didn't. It got worse. Because Brooke started talking. Quietly at first, then openly. She talked to the rest of the cousins, told them what she saw, what she knew. She didn't care anymore about loyalty or keeping peace. She said if a kid was getting hurt, and we all stayed quiet, we were just as guilty. A few of them pulled away, said they didn't want to get involved. But not all. Nate backed her up. So did Julia and Thomas. And soon, the group chat my mom had created to bring everyone back together. It was just the 5 of them, sending Bible verses and passive-aggressive memes, while the rest of us opened a new thread without them. That's the thing about families like mine, they think control equals love. That if you cut someone out financially, you've taught them a lesson. That if you lie loud enough, long enough, no one will check the facts. But they forgot something. I've been quiet my whole life, playing the role, picking up the bill, staying out of the way. Now they've forced me out of the script, and I've never felt more free. It was around mid-January when I realized no one was calling just to talk anymore. Every text, every missed call that still came through, it all had a purpose, a strategy behind it. Either trying to lure me into a conversation I wouldn't win, or bait me into saying something they could use against me later. Even my dad, who used to pride himself on staying neutral, had stopped pretending. He sent me one message that said, "We don't air family problems in public. You've done enough damage." That was his version of being involved, minimize the problem, blame the person who spoke up, and call it leadership. But the thing about staying neutral when someone's being hurt is you've already picked a side. My mom tried again with her guilt campaign, sent old photos. One from a camping trip when I was 10, another of me holding my sister as a baby. Captioned it, "We were always meant to protect each other." I stared at it for a while. I remembered the trip. I remembered the weight of her in my arms. What I didn't remember until now was how early they started grooming me to carry all the weight and none of the blame. Protect each other? She never protected me when I was 14, and she told my parents I'd skipped school because she wanted to go to the movies and needed someone else in trouble. I took the fall. When she wrecked my car at 19 and cried until they blamed me for letting her drive it, I paid for the repairs. When she quit her job and told them I said she could focus on school full-time, I covered her rent for 5 months straight. Now she wanted to sue me for $18,000 and claim emotional damage because I dared to say no. But the real shift came when Brooke texted me something unexpected. She talked to one of the neighbors, the same one who had knocked during that screaming incident last summer. Turns out she'd made a note. She was a retired social worker, had concerns, but didn't know the family well enough to push. Brooke gave her my number. We spoke for 40 minutes. She remembered it all, said she'd seen my sister yelling at the kids more than once. Said the older one once came to her porch barefoot, asking if she could use her phone because Mommy locked the door. I recorded the call with her permission, added it to the file, and then I made the decision. I hired my own attorney. Not to go after the money. I didn't want it back. I just wanted it all documented on record. The calls, the abuse, the manipulation, the fact that after all of it, they still tried to erase me from the narrative like I was the threat. I made it clear to my lawyer, this wasn't about revenge. This was about setting the boundary none of them ever thought I would. The cousins, my side of them now, started pulling away officially. Christmas group chat, left. Family reunion plans, cancelled. They even set up a private page. No parents, no aunts, no uncles. Just us, sharing updates, photos, support. It was weird. I never thought I'd find family after the collapse, but there it was, a smaller one, a real one. And I wasn't the outsider anymore. I was just the first one to leave the fire. By February, the family felt like a collapsed building, still standing in parts, but everything solid underneath had cracked. The kind of damage you can't see unless you know what to look for. From the outside, they still looked like a family. A little loud, maybe dysfunctional, but still together. But from the inside, anyone paying attention could see what had happened. There were now 2 versions of the truth being told, theirs, which had me as the bitter, overreacting older brother who blew up Christmas over a folding chair and some money he never really meant to give, and mine, which had receipts, statements, photos, and years of silence I had finally decided to break. My mom didn't call again after that last voicemail. She went quiet, but not really. I heard from Brooke that she'd been telling people I was struggling, trying to make it seem like this was just a phase, that I was probably just burned out from work. She was using words like concerned and worried, instead of admitting I had every reason to walk away. It wasn't just denial, it was calculated. If she could control the story, she could still come out of it looking like a mother who cared. And maybe she did care, but it didn't change what she did, what she didn't do, what she let happen. My dad never even pretended. He stuck with his default strategy, control the narrative by shaming anyone who spoke up. He told people I was threatening legal action over nothing. That I was trying to get attention. He used the same tone he'd always had when we were kids, like everything I did was a phase, an overreaction, a problem to be corrected. The thing that really got to me, though, was how fast my sister moved on. She never apologized, never reached out after that last screaming phone call. Instead, she pivoted into a PR campaign, started posting the kids constantly. Every photo looked staged, cookie decorating, coloring books, matching pajamas. And the captions were loaded, stuff about growth, about grace, about moving forward, healing, and how sometimes family wounds take time to close. She was turning it into a narrative where she was the victim. She'd always had that skill, knew how to cry just hard enough to make people forget what came before the tears. But this time, fewer people bought it, because I wasn't alone anymore. Brooke told me her mom, my aunt, tried to guilt her into making peace. Said, things have gone too far. And that it's still family at the end of the day. Brooke shut it down. She said, it was family the day Jack paid 18 grand. It wasn't family when they threatened to sue him. I didn't ask her to say that. She just did. It started happening more. Nate blocked our uncle after he called me vindictive in a group message. Julia left the family WhatsApp without saying a word. Thomas told my mom directly to stop messaging him about fixing things. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. None of them had ever stood up like that before, but once one person does, it gets easier for others to see what they've been putting up with. In March, I got a birthday card from my mom. Inside, a handwritten note. "We miss you. I hope you come home soon. These things can heal if we let them." No apology, no acknowledgement, just a gentle, manipulative nudge framed like love. I left it on my desk for a week, then shredded it. It felt final doing that, like drawing a line and stepping over it for good. I started seeing a therapist that same month. Not because I felt broken, because I wanted to make sure I never ended up like them. I wanted to understand why I'd tolerated it all for so long, why I kept giving and explaining and hoping they'd wake up. We unpacked a lot about the pressure to be the good one. About how I was trained to keep the peace, to carry the weight quietly, to clean up messes I didn't make. About how love in our house was conditional, and compliance was the currency. By April, the DA still hadn't filed charges, but they hadn't closed the case either. It was open, documented, and that alone was more than I'd thought I'd ever see. And the most unexpected thing? I felt okay. No drama, no screaming matches, just space. Clean, quiet space where I didn't have to apologize for existing. The cousins and I started meeting once a month. Casual stuff, dinner, a hike, trivia night. But real. No tension, no one walking on eggshells. Just people who finally said enough. I looked around that table last week. Brooke telling a story about a coworker meltdown, Nate arguing about which local pizza place was overrated, Julia showing us her wedding venue, and I realized this was the first time in my life that family didn't mean obligation. It meant choice. They tried to make me feel like I'd ruined everything. What they don't know is I finally fixed something. Update. I was starting to believe it was over, that the silence from their side meant they'd moved on, or at least figured out I wasn't going to fold. Then came Easter. I didn't go, obviously, but Brooke and Nate did. Not because they were ready to forgive, but because they wanted to see how the other side was spinning it. That's what we started calling it. The other side. It sounded dramatic at first, like something from a custody battle, but honestly, that's exactly what it felt like, a fight over who gets to claim the title of family. What Brooke told me afterward didn't surprise me. It just confirmed everything. They had a new story now. According to my mom, and repeated word for word by my aunt, I was being influenced. They didn't say, manipulated, outright, but they implied it enough. That Brooke had put ideas in my head. That I was being poisoned against them by people who didn't want to see the family united. Which is hilarious, considering Brooke didn't even know about the $18,000 until after everything exploded. But the kicker was this. My sister had printed out a copy of the original transfer receipt, the one from when I wired her the tuition money. She passed it around, showed it to people at the table, claimed it was proof that I'd promised it was a loan, even though that receipt had no note, no agreement, no terms. Just a bank record. Like showing a blurry photo of a plane and saying it proves you own an airline. But the provocation didn't stop there. 2 days later, I got an email, not from her boyfriend. A guy I barely know. He wrote 3 paragraphs about how he knows the kind of person I am deep down. And how this isn't me. He said I needed to stop hiding behind my cousins. And be a man. And face my family. I stared at that email for a while. This guy, who once showed up to a barbecue without shoes and asked me for a Venmo because he forgot his wallet, was now lecturing me on manhood and morality. And somehow had the nerve to frame it like he was trying to help. I didn't respond. I forwarded it straight to my attorney. Then I did something I hadn't done yet. I posted. Not a full tell-all, not names, just a simple paragraph on a locked account where only mutual friends could see it. I wrote, "Sometimes family asks you to stay quiet for the sake of peace, but silence protects the wrong people. I didn't blow up Christmas over a chair. I didn't freeze a card out of spite. I reported what I saw because children were involved, and I won't apologize for that. If telling the truth makes me the villain in someone else's version of events, so be it. But I'm done being useful to people who only love me when I'm useful." It didn't go viral or anything, but it spread in the exact corner of the world where it needed to. That night, Julia sent me a screenshot of a text thread she wasn't supposed to be in. My mom, my aunt, and my sister talking about how they might need to escalate things. How they could get Jack to stop if they push the right buttons. My mom even said, he doesn't like being seen as cruel. He'll fold if we lean on that. She really thought I was still the same kid who used to fix everything to make sure no one was mad. But that kid's gone. They're not getting him back.